Were you surprised, or did you see it all the way?
No, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised at all. I'd have been shocked if they didn't take him. I think especially came down to the last couple days, it was almost to the point like it was getting to the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. It was kind of like the national reporting from Schefter and all these guys. It was a conclusion. They started talking about the picks after the Patriots. Once they got to that point, I said, yeah, it's Drake Maye. He's going to be the one. And sure enough, it wasn't any hesitation of the Patriots. They went and grabbed their guy and moved on. Good for them.
So how are you feeling? Drake Maye's your quarterback.
I feel good. I mean, I feel as good as I can, even about the guys behind him. I'm a fan of Penix. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big fan of Michael Penix.
Yeah.
But if they would have grabbed Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy, I might have been feeling a totally different way this morning. But I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine with Drake Maye. And I'm fine with what they did after they got Drake Maye. And I think that was a huge part of it. But only other person that was available that I would take over him would have been Michael Penix. But other than that, I'm fine with either one.
So now the question becomes, what's next? And I think that starts with when does Drake Maye play? And they were Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf, very strong after the draft, saying, we're not going to call him our starter. He's going to have to come in. He's going to have to win it just like everybody else. Jacoby's here. Mm-hmm. And we kind of heard that about Mac Jones, too. Now, obviously, different coaching staff. But remember, after they drafted Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, Cam Newton's our starter. He didn't even Mayo and Wolf didn't say who the starter was. They just said, we're not naming Drake Maye the starter. Yeah. Bill said Cam's the starter, and it was that up until the day Cam got cut. Do you think the door is open at all for Drake Maye to start week one? Or because the way they were talking, I wonder, and I've said this, pick a plan and commit to it. I wonder if they're going to make sure Drake Maye sits for a little bit and really, really gets that time to develop.
As a fan, I don't want him to. I don't want him to sit. I want to see him. I want to see the new shiny toy, immediately. Especially with the receivers that they've drafted to some. We knew they would draft receivers, but seeing it actually happen, seeing them get guys, and picking up what's his name from Minnesota. Name's losing me right now, but seeing all the different pieces they added and with players that they drafted, I want to see him play, and I want to see him play for the fact that I want to see what he can and can't do. That way, when you go in the next offseason, you can say, okay, all we need to add is this. All we need to add is that. I think it sets you back another year of not really knowing we don't even know if the kid can play when it's cold outside. So I want to see him play. That way, you know what you're building around in the future. If he has a bad year, okay, we know we need to add this, increase our running game, whatever we need to do. This type of receiver, get a little more speed, whatever it may be. Design our offense to get him on a move a little more, whatever. I'm just throwing that out there. But I think seeing him play, they're going to see a lot of him in training camp practice and stuff like that. But seeing him in live action allows them to really have a game plan going into next offseason. I think just not playing him puts all that back, and you're kind of not tanking the season. You're kind of throwing the season away. And how does that feel for the guys in the locker room and the rest of the guys on the team like that? I don't want to sit a year and just whatever as a test year or whatever. So it's just a weird feeling, but if that's what they want to do, then so be it.
Yeah, I would just say, you got to have commitment, right? And it goes beyond what he's doing in training camp. Mm-hmm. If he lights up training camp, great. How's that going to translate to game action? Even in the preseason, I think everything's going to have to come with level of expectation. I hope he plays quite a bit in the preseason, early in games, so we can get an idea. I don't need to see Jacoby Brissett in the preseason. There's nothing against Jacoby Brissett, but I know what Jacoby Brissett is. He knows what he is. Everybody knows what Jacoby Brissett is. So I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Do you think they got him enough help in the draft? In terms of his rookie year, obviously they're going to keep building this thing. I think we're still going to be talking about tackles next year. I think we're still going to be talking about, at least at the top of the board, receivers next year. But for rookie year, for a baseline, do you feel like they helped him out enough?
I think they did, man. I think Polk and Baker, they're playmakers. I know people looking at their 40 times and just saying, oh, they don't take the top off the defense. I didn't see anybody really catching those guys on the field, but Polk, look at if Polk wasn't playing with, the teammates he had and was somewhere else, what would his numbers look like? What would his targets look like? For him to have over 1,000 yards and was a 9-10 touchdowns as a number 2 is pretty impressive. And you saw him in in the playoff game against Texas. He had a big game. For those who watched some of Washington's games, he was a big play guy. I didn't see Baker much at all. I'm not going to sit here and say I've seen a bunch of UCF football, but for everything I've seen or read about the kid, he's a playmaker as well. Strong guys and go get the football and kind of take interceptions away from DBs and keep possessions alive. And as far as Jaheim Bell, I think my comp to him on the field, people don't get mad at me, on the field is Aaron Hernandez. He reminds me of Aaron Hernandez type tight end. You can kind of put him all over the place. Not really a tight end, not really a fullback, but if you use him right, he can be a legit weapon. That's what he looks like to me when I first seen the kid. But, I think they've done enough. The offensive line we still don't know. But, I mean, they picked up guys who are pretty solid on that level. It's all you can really go by. Does that mean the kid from Penn State, does he get kicked out to left tackle? Does Michael Winter kick out the right tackle? I don't know, but they addressed it. They tried to get guys on the offensive line. They've gone out and got them help. And like you mentioned earlier, there was a crazy run on left tackles. So it was kind of like, dag, well, we got needs all over the place, just like there was a run on wide receiver right before they were picking. So they probably got the best guys that were left that were on their board. So I think they tried to do enough for them. I mean, I think them just with the draft, but I think they've done enough for them there. I would love to see all these guys on the field, and man, for some reason, I think Pop Douglas is going to have an insane season. But that's just me. Whenever Drake Maye plays, excuse me.
Well, to go back to your point of or to talk about Pop Douglas, I talked about this earlier. I think Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and actually, sorry, it's Javon. I saw that yesterday. Javon Baker and Jalen. So they got the Jays now, like the Celtics. Jalen. Javon Baker, Jalen Polk are both downfield receivers with big catch radius. That maximizes on what Drake Maye does, and that's why I like those picks. And I say that, and people say, well, you can't throw the ball deep every play. You can't, correct, but that's where Pop Douglas is going to come in. Those guys, ideally, how I think it's going to work is those guys are going to command coverage down the field, so teams can't stack the box, teams can't crowd things underneath, and you're going to have Pop Douglas, you're going to have Kendrick Bourne, you're going to have Hunter Henry, one-on-one in the short and intermediate parts of the field. And you can pick, if Drake Maye can become more accurate in that area, you can pick teams apart there. And that's, it seems to be pretty clearly what the plan is. So in that sense, again, it feels very complete. The one thing I think they're missing, and we can get to this a little next. And by the way, if you want to call in and talk draft, 617-779-0985. I think both of these guys have the ceiling of like high-level number 2 receivers. And so these are the complementary pieces. And I know we've kind of been spinning our wheels here with the Patriots have all these great complementary receivers, but they don't have another number 1. But they lost some of those complementary guys. They're getting older. So they reset that. Now, next year, if you go out, you get that true number 1 to pair with Jalen Polk, to pair with Javon Baker. Now you're in great shape. Now you're really in great shape. So I think that's the one more guy you're looking for. But the thing about a guy like Jalen Polk, who's so versatile, who can play in the slot, who can play on the boundary, who runs a pretty diverse route tree, is you're not necessarily handcuffed in what your other receiver is, because he can cover whatever role you need covered.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember too, I couldn't think of the kid's name, KJ Osborne. That's what I was trying to think of.
So he's another vertical player.
Another guy you add in, Hunter Henry, I think, would benefit huge when these guys are on the field. Just something we've talked about all, last season. It's not really, like you say, can't throw it deep to these guys every single time, but the threat of having guys on the field that you can throw the ball to, it changes the way you do a bunch of things, the way they cover this team. Whereas before, they just sat there and was like, we don't trust any of these guys downfield or the quarterbacks to throw it to them. And it made it difficult for everybody else underneath. Like you said, Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry's going to have himself a day. And picking up third down, receiving back now. I mean, it's just that's what I wanted to out of the draft. I wanted to see another running back. I meant to bring that up earlier. I wanted to see them pick up a running back. It hurt my soul that running backs didn't start going till late in the draft. But I wanted to see the Patriots grab a running back, and they didn't. But maybe they'll address it in a different way. But I do believe they've not would say done enough. They've done the best they can so far for Drake Maye in building this offense. They have a plan. Those guys are big receivers when it comes to running the ball, run blocking, stuff like that. I think they've done a pretty solid job on the offensive side of the ball in this draft.